So joining us now to talk about all of this is Republican Congressman Byron Donalds of Florida, who serves on the Financial Services Committee. You're going to be holding hearings on this next week. What do you think the Federal Reserve is going to do? If they do a smaller interest rate raise, if they do a quarter point, is that helpful or hurtful in your view?
I think it's going to just keep things kind of going the way everybody assumes it's going to go. I think a quarter point's fine. Me personally, I think the Fed should just go ahead and go to 50 basis points because the underlying issue, whether we want to talk about bank balance sheets or not, is this inflation in our economy, which is really crippling younger families, seniors, people on the lower end of the economic spectrum in America. They're suffering the most. You have to get this inflation out of our economy. If you can do that and get that job done, you can then figure out how to contain and protect bank balance sheets to the best that you can so the banking system can continue to thrive.
Do you think there's an appropriate legislative response here, maybe ensuring deposits over $250,000? What do you want to see as a result of what we've seen play out with banks?
Actually, I don't really think there's a legislative response because if you look at the facts, a couple of things occurred. Number one, at Silicon Valley Bank, they didn't have a chief risk officer for about 6 to 9 months, somewhere in that time window. Obviously, they weren't paying attention to the duration risk on their bonds. A big question we have is what was Mary Daly, who is the president of the San Francisco Fed, what was she paying attention to, and why wasn't she raising the alarms on a bank that she was regulating and overseeing what was going on there? You have a failure of management at this bank, not a contagion in the banking system overall. So I don't think there's a legislative fix. What probably should have happened is the FDIC should have allowed for a sale to happen pretty quickly, and then you can figure out how to manage the rest of the banks in that same kind of position with respect to their balance sheet.
Okay, Congressman, we'll wait to see what those hearings look like. And also, you're joining us from Orlando, where the Republican retreat is happening right now. We just saw House Speaker McCarthy speaking. We actually want to play a soundbite of what he just said, weighing in on our next subject, which is this looming potential indictment of former President Trump.
Look, the thing I think about, it was interesting. Someone briefed me on the use of money in a situation like this before, and you probably covered this. Remember when the DNC and Hillary Clinton paid the law firm $1 million, and said that it was for something else, and we found out later it wasn't. It was all about the Russia collusion. It wasn't for a legal part. And so they went through, and they got investigated. $1 million they spent, and you know what? At the end of the day, they didn't get prosecuted. They got fined. Hillary's campaign got fined $8,000, and the DNC got fined $100,000.
Congressman, there's the rest of the remarks there still playing out. He was essentially arguing that what's happening with Trump in this investigation is that it's political, that was personal money, talking about the timeline of when the payments happened. We don't know if the indictment is going to happen or when it's going to happen yet, but Trump has called for protest. If there are protests, do you think that they should be peaceful?
Of course. And I think that, of course, every protest should be peaceful. We've never argued for anything different than that. I think if there are Americans who choose to protest, they should do it peacefully. But let's be very clear. What Alvin Bragg and his office is attempting to do is use essentially an investigation that the DOJ looked at, the FEC looked at. They did not bring charges. They said there's nothing really to do with this. They moved on. And he's trying to quote legal experts, shoehorn some legal theory to go get Trump. That's the essence of political prosecution. That's what's happening right now in New York, which I think is wrong. He should be focused on the people who are actually perpetrating crimes against the people of New York today, as opposed to playing gotcha politics.
3 House committee chairs are now publicly demanding that Alvin Bragg sit for a transcribed interview, turn over material from his investigation. But we haven't even seen an indictment yet. Don't you think they should wait for the actual indictment to happen before they can call for a congressional investigation?
No, I don't think so, because even if you have a situation where you have a prosecutor who is really now living outside the bounds of even his prosecutorial authorities and abilities, that's something that, yeah, judiciary should take a look at that. Oversight committee should be able to take a look at that. We don't want to have a system of justice in our country that is politically motivated. And if you're going to go pull out the payments to Stormy Daniels through Michael Cohen, and then now say that there's some hidden felony nobody knows about, and you're trying to raise the stakes to bring that in, yeah, Congress should look at that, because we don't want an unequal application of the law. We don't want a law basically to just point at one person. That's not our system of justice in America. That is, I believe, under congressional purview. And Chairmans Jordan and Comer expressly stated that in their letter that they released yesterday.
But how can you investigate it if you don't actually know what the charges are yet?
Well, this is why we're just asking for simple documentation about the communications between former members of the New York DA's office and what they're going on with right now, where federal money's used associated to help this investigation move forward. Those are simple requests of information that we're making at this point. We'll look at that response and then to make a determination from there.
Well, also asking him to come for a transcribed interview. You're from Florida. Your governor, Ron DeSantis, weighed in on this yesterday. This is what he said.
I don't know what goes into paying hush money to a porn star to secure silence over some type of alleged affair. I can't speak to that. But what I can speak to is that if you have a prosecutor who is ignoring crimes happening every single day in his jurisdiction, and he chooses to go back many, many years ago to try to use something about porn star hush money payments, that's an example of pursuing a political agenda and weaponizing the office.
Congressman, what'd you make of him making a point to note the underlying conduct here?
Look, I just think that's Governor DeSantis trying to explain fully his viewpoint on this whole thing. But look, I'm not going to get into the political semantics, obviously, that are happening in Florida right now. We got to get back to the issue at hand. Alvin Bragg is overstepping his bounds as a prosecutor. There have been issues with prosecutors who have been widely using their discretion, in some respects, overusing it, while at the same time in his city, he's ignoring violent crimes. The NYPD's arresting people. He's letting them walk out the back door. That needs to be the focus. The back and forth between Ron DeSantis and Donald Trump, that'll take care of itself in the future.
Yeah, well, I should note that Alvin Bragg, his office did say homicides are down, shootings are down in Manhattan. But on DeSantis and Trump, it is a real question. You're from Florida. If DeSantis runs, which candidate are you going to support?
Listen, first of all, Ron DeSantis hasn't even gotten into this race. So the hypotheticals, I don't really get into that. Right now, we're focused on what we're doing to get the American economy and the American people back on track in Congress. Governor DeSantis is doing his job as governor. I was with him the other day dealing with Hurricane Ian, aftermath reports, trying to get pressure on FEMA to actually do its job and get trailers to the people who are still about 1,300 homeless in my district. FEMA doesn't want to put trailers because we live in a flood zone. Talk about ridiculous. We're focused on that. And Donald Trump is running for president, and he's focused on trying to get our nomination and then going on to potentially becoming the 47th president. So those are the things that matter right now.
All right, Congressman, thank you so much for joining us this morning from Orlando, from the Republican retreat.
Of course, anytime.